Welcome to US and World News Channel. Ukraine braced for an anticipated large-scale Russian offensive in the eastern Donbas region, and heavy clashes continued in the area. Russia's Donbas strategy could remain impaired, however, by a Ukrainian strike on a Russian ship last month. President Volodymyr Zelensky warned Irish lawmakers that the Russian assault would cause widespread hunger. Russia pressed on with long-range missile strikes, targeting fuel depots across Ukraine. In Ukraine, Western officials said that Russia's withdrawal from around Kyiv is largely complete. Some residents are returning to the capital city but remain skeptical that they have seen the last of Russian forces. The Turkish embassy reopened and Lithuania's ambassador could return as soon as Thursday, officials said. War crimes accusations. The U.S. Department of Justice is working with European authorities on a plan to gather evidence about atrocities in Ukraine, Attorney General Merrick Garland said Wednesday. Pope Francis decried horrendous cruelties in Ukraine, including in the martyred city of Bucha, where reports of atrocities have prompted allegations of Russian war crimes, which Moscow denies. China shifted its tone, calling images from Bucha extremely disturbing, while continuing to avoid casting blame on Moscow. The U.S. sanctions Putin's adult children and ban all new investment in Russia. The United States on Wednesday announced it would impose a new slate of sanctions on Russia over its invasion of Ukraine, and that for the first time, sanctions would target the two adult daughters of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Katerina Tikhonova and Maria Putina, who are in their 30s, are rarely seen in public and almost never mentioned by their father. The Kremlin has only ever identified them by their first names. We believe that many of Putin's assets are hidden with family members, and that's why we're targeting them, said a senior administration official who spoke on background to preview the new measures. In 2015, Putin acknowledged that his daughters lived in Russia and were fluent in multiple languages, but said, "To talk about where exactly my daughters work and what they do, I have never done this and I'm not going to do it now, for many reasons, including security issues." In addition to Putin's daughters, the US will sanction Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov's wife and daughter, as well as former President and Prime Minister of Russia Dmitry Medvedev and Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin, the White House announced. US officials said this latest round of sanctions was in direct response to shocking new evidence of what is likely to be war crimes committed by Russian troops in the Ukrainian town of Bucha. There, civilians were found shot to death with their hands tied behind their backs following Russia's weeks-long occupation of the village. There's nothing less happening than major war crimes, President Joe Biden said in a speech Wednesday in Washington. Biden says the US will ratchet up the pain for Putin. UN identifies 63 children among 1,563 dead civilians in Ukraine. Thousands are desperately trying to flee Ukraine's eastern Donbas region as Russia intensifies its strikes on the south and east of the country. The Luhansk regional governor has urged civilians to evacuate while it is safe, predicting a larger Russian assault to come. The EU and US are preparing to levy new sanctions on Russia after evidence emerged of potential war crimes committed by Russian forces in the Ukrainian town of Bucha, where some 300 civilian bodies were found on streets and in mass graves. The sanctions from the EU will include a ban on Russian coal imports, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said, which are worth $4 billion annually. The move is significant for the EU, which imported nearly 20% of its coal from Russia in 2020. Some still say this isn't enough, as the EU continues to buy oil and gas from Russia, providing it with billions of dollars weekly. Meanwhile, fighting and Russian airstrikes continue in the besieged eastern city of Mariupol, where aid agencies say the humanitarian crisis is worsening as some 160,000 residents have no access to water, power, heating, or communication. The US tested a hypersonic missile in mid-March but kept it quiet to avoid escalating tensions with Russia. The US successfully tested a hypersonic missile in mid-March but kept it quiet for 2 weeks to avoid escalating tensions with Russia as President Joe Biden was about to travel to Europe, according to a defense official familiar with the matter. The hypersonic air-breathing weapon concept, HAWC, was launched from a B-52 bomber off the west coast, the official said, in the first successful test of the Lockheed Martin version of the system. A booster engine accelerated the missile to high speed, at which point the air-breathing scramjet engine ignited and propelled the missile at hypersonic speeds of Mach 5 and above. The official offered scant details of the missile test, only noting the missile flew above 65,000 feet and for more than 300 miles. But even at the lower end of the hypersonic range, about 3,800 miles per hour, a flight of 300 miles is less than 5 minutes. The test came days after Russia says it used its hypersonic missile during its invasion of Ukraine, claiming it targeted an ammunition warehouse in western Ukraine. US officials downplayed the significance of the Russian use of their hypersonic Kinzhal missile. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said he did not view it as some sort of game changer after the Russians announced the missile launch. Days later, Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby said it was hard to know what exactly the justification was for the launch since it targeted a stationary storage facility. "That's a pretty significant sledgehammer to take out a target like that," Kirby said at the time. The Kinzhal missile is simply an air-launched version of the Russian Iskander short-range ballistic missile. In other words, it is a variation of an established technology as opposed to a revolution in hypersonic weaponry. The US test was of a more sophisticated and difficult air-breathing scramjet engine. The Hawk missile also has no warhead, instead of relying on its kinetic energy to destroy the target. At the time of the US test, Biden was preparing for a visit to NATO allies in Europe, including a stop in Poland where he met with Ukraine's foreign minister and defense minister. The US has been careful not to take steps or make statements that could unnecessarily escalate the tensions between Washington and Moscow. On Friday, the US cancelled a test of the Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile, ICBM, to avoid any misinterpretation by Russia. Austin had already postponed the test in early March to avoid any actions that could be misconstrued by Russia at such a sensitive time. On US and world news, our mission is simple: we provide you with the latest headlines from the US and abroad. We do not have a personal agenda, so you can trust that the stories we report are unbiased and factual. Please subscribe.